My name is Tony Lance. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the chairman of the Robertson County Democratic Party. And on behalf of our executive committee, it's my great privilege to welcome you here to this town hall. In just a bit, I'm going to have a chance to talk to these four fine candidates so you can learn more about them and make an informed decision at the primary date. But before we get to that, I want to take a moment and acknowledge what happened in Utah today. I know that we probably didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on politics, but I'm absolutely certain that we all agree that violence is not the answer. So let's take a quick moment, or let's take a moment and have a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk and his family. Will everybody please stand? Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight are three of our veterans. They are Janie Hudgens, Ted Stubblefield, and Craig Matthews. We're going to do something a little bit different for the pledge. When we get to the last 6 words of the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all, please raise your voices in solidarity with the immigrants and our neighbors. Leading us in prayer this evening is Dr. J.B. Angus Jr.
Let us bow. Dear God, maker of heaven and the earth, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the great I am, we come before your throne of grace and mercy tonight in the spirit of the prophet Habakkuk would say, how long, O Lord, will I call for help and you will not hear? I cry out to you violence, yet you do not save. Why do you not make me see iniquities and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists, contentions arise. Therefore the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. But remember that you are a God who is able to take something we've never seen before and will tell us to watch out, to be astonished, and to be amazed at what you're about to do with things we would never think of, oh God. We pray for the Kirk family in the wake of this horrendous act of violence against them. And God, we also pray for Irina Zartuska's family who are mourning her loss. We pray over those displaced in Gaza and Ukraine. We pray over our neighbors who are under siege at this very moment. God, we lament in a place we find ourselves today. God, we ask for strength to love our neighbors. We ask for the strength to clothe the naked. We ask for the strength to quench the thirst of the thirsty and to satiate the growls of hunger in the bellies of the hungry. We humbly ask for you to be with our leaders and representatives of our country. Pray no harm will come to them as they do their work. God, provide strength for them to stand in the gap for justice for all. We pray for our kids that you keep them safe. And most of all, we pray for the ones who will stand up here tonight. Provide them with wisdom and us discernment as we come to another time to make a choice. God, guide us and keep us in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. In the mighty name of Jesus, the Christ, let us all say, amen.
And if everyone would take a moment and silence your cell phones, we'd appreciate that. Before we get to the part of the program, I want to take a minute and recognize our special elections subcommittee, which is chaired by Jared Lefter, for all the time and effort they put in to make this event possible. There were a number of folks who performed double and triple duty, and I want to recognize them by name. Donna Doris, Rita Davis, Caroline Bowman Snyder, Donna Lewis, Stormy Stafford, and Craig Matthews went above and beyond working on the town hall. Additionally, Andrew Reed and Mike Lewis have done a fantastic job with their Neighbors Helping Neighbors podcast leading up to this event, and Elizabeth Webb has led the way with her canvassing efforts. I want to give a very special thanks to Tamara Bathenden for her exemplary leadership and dedication throughout this entire process. If you guys have not met Tamara, she's a powerhouse. She is taking our county party to another level. Tamara, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to Stephanie Bradley for the pumpkins and flowers you see on the stage here. Also to Stan Stanley for so ably handling our audio visual needs, and to all the volunteers who you see around here tonight making this event possible. Please give them a round of applause. Our moderator for the evening is well known and greatly respected in our community. He served 3 terms as Robertson County Mayor, was president of the Tennessee County Mayors Association, and to this day, he holds the distinction of having been the youngest person elected to office in our state. It's my great privilege to welcome to the stage Mr. Howard Bradley.
Thank you very much, Tony, and welcome to this evening. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And welcome to the Innovation Academy, formerly Springfield Middle School, formerly Springfield High School. This beautiful structure was built by the Work Progress Administration in the city of Springfield in 1938 at a cost of $259,000.
That's a lot.
We had this space you're in right now was renovated 8 years ago at a cost of $4 million. But we are so very proud of what we have in this community and what this school has meant to countless generations of people from Springfield and Robertson County. I'm going to do a brief introduction of our candidates, and they will go in much more detail than I will. And then we will begin the time for them to do their 5-minute opening statement. First, Representative Afton Bain, graduate of the University of Texas at Austin with a BS and Master's in Social Work. She was elected to the legislature 2 years ago to fill the seat left with the passing of Representative Bill Beck. She describes herself as a pissed-off social worker who has seen firsthand how broken systems fail the very people things are meant to protect. In the legislature, she has proposed eliminating the tax on groceries and many, many other items. We also have Mr. Darby Copeland, who is the founder and CEO of Calvert Stream Group, a public relations firm. He worked for the transit referendum. He was a graduate of the University of Richmond, and he worked in the Al Gore campaign for the president. He's also worked for a number of other Democrats, state, local, and federal. We have with us Representative Vincent Dixie. He's been in the legislature for the last 6 years. He's a graduate of Tennessee State University with a BBA and an MBA. He's the founder of 2 bail bonding companies. He was also an internal auditor for Hospital Corporation of America. He sponsored bills to support treatment rather than incarceration for many drug offenses, to expand Medicaid eligibility for those with opioid addiction. And then we have Representative James R. Bo Mitchell. He's been in the House of Representatives since 2013. Before that, he was in the Metro Council. He holds a BA from Lipscomb University and a JD from Nashville School of Law. Began his career as a volunteer in the Bill Clinton campaign of 1992. And he was the Director of Community Affairs for Governor Gressel. Currently, he's the Regional Director of Health Cost Solutions. So we will now move on to our opening statements, and in the most unscientific method you can imagine, I will pull out the first name, and this person will give their first 5-minute opening statement. And that is Representative Bain.
All right, Robertson County, you excited? Look it up. All right. We've been on the campaign trail. Some feedback. Is that hard for you all? Keep talking. Okay, we're good. We've been on the campaign trail for the past few weeks, and it's just been so much fun coming out to places like this. So I'm Representative Afton Bay. I'm a social worker turned community organizer turned legislator. But in 2016, I was working at the United Nations in Switzerland when President Trump was elected the first time. And I decided to move back to East Tennessee because I wanted to get involved in politics. So I took my parents out to eat. I grew up in Knoxville. I took them out to eat, and I told them that this was going to be my life's work. And my mom started crying so hard she had to be escorted out of the restaurant. And since then, the job I got out of, the first job out of that was as a community organizer trying to expand Medicaid with the Tennessee Justice Center. Some of you may be familiar with their work. They help families with kids with disabilities, cut the red tape of our state government. And then in 2018, I was hired as the organizer for a group called Indivisible, which some of you may have heard of. I was the only statewide organizer in the state for 3 years, and that's when I helped a lot of groups in the 7th Congressional District, including Clarksville Indivisible and Indivisible TN7, jumpstart their organizing efforts and trying to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. And then from there, I became the campaign director at a group called Rural Organizing. And I helped to mobilize rural voters in small towns and rural communities across the country, especially for the 2 successful reproductive ballot referendums in Ohio and Montana, which we're really excited about that. And then in April of 2023, the unthinkable happened. Do you all remember what happened in April 2023? The Tennessee 3. And so for those of us that live in Nashville that are kind of these professional hell raisers, if you will, when things like this happen, we're called in and to help organize all of the protests and rallies. And so I took off 12 days of work with the other organizers across the state to facilitate and organize ongoing events. And it was during this moment in time, the final day of the expulsions, I planned the final press conference of the night when the Tennessee 3 were going to come out and tell their stories to the entire world. We had Italian national TV streaming in, MSNBC, CNN, right? And, the backdrop of this multi-class, multi-race constituency. And it was just this moment in time where it's like, why is this happening in Tennessee? What is happening to our democracy? And it was at that moment that I felt compelled to run for office. And a few weeks later, unfortunately, my state representative died, and I jumped in to run for a state house race. And since then, I have never backed down from a fight. I have been on the front lines like I was in May when I went out on ice watch in my House district, recorded a video that Representative Andy Ogles retweeted and called for my arrest. The Department of Homeland Security then retweeted the video and said all elected officials would be arrested. I had to get a federal criminal defense attorney and still was organizing behind the scenes to ensure that our Hispanic community members were taken care of. I am dogged. I am steadfast. I have the energy to be in this race, to continue working, and especially navigating what is coming, which is economic austerity and authoritarianism. And so I have these skill sets, and I've dedicated my entire life to taking back this state from the grips of authoritarianism and extremism. And I would appreciate your vote. I'm excited for this discussion. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
We'll have you, Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank y'all. Hey, good evening, Robertson County. I'm Bo Mitchell, and I grew up on Highway 49. I grew up in Charlotte, Tennessee, not that far from here. I'm now a state representative in Bellevue. I represent Bellevue, Joelton, and Goodlettsville at the General Assembly. I have for the last 13 years. And before that, I was a Metro councilman. But as
Mayor Bradley said in his opening, I graduated, went to Dixon County High School, graduated Dixon County High School in '88 and went on to David Lipscomb University, where I started volunteering for a man named Bill Clinton in 1991 and got on the staff there for the presidential campaign. After college, I started working for a state senator that represented Dixon County, where I grew up, and 7 other rural counties. Guy named Pete Springer. Well, 7 of those rural counties are in this congressional district. So I've kind of got the best of town and country. I'm representing an urban district in Nashville, but I'm from the rural area, and I've been running across these rural counties for most of my adult life. Like I like to tell some of my opponents, I don't need ways to get to these little small towns. I've been there and I know how to get back. But one thing is very important to me after the passage of that big, beautiful mess of a bill. When I was 10 years old, my father had a massive heart attack. He did drywall for a living. So if he wasn't working, there was no money coming into the house. Well, the insurance company raised our rates over $1,000 a month in 1980. We lost our health care. I didn't have any health care from the time I was 10 years old till I was almost 19. Went to work for a medical practice, and one of the doctors found out I didn't have insurance, and he said, "Well, you do today, son." So thankfully for him, I had health insurance again. But no Tennessean should go without health insurance. No American should go without health insurance. Unfortunately, Tennessee leads the nation in bankruptcies caused by medical bills. That shouldn't be anyone's concern. Someone gets sick, you're worried about getting better. You're not worried about losing your house. And we've got to do better as a state. This big, beautiful bill has done things like in our state, we didn't expand Medicaid. So 41 other states and the District of Columbia were smart enough to do that. Our governor and General Assembly refused to do that. So we've lost billions of dollars in our states because of that. You are subsidizing health care for Californians and New Yorkers with your federal income tax dollars. And we don't get those benefits because Republicans in this state. We've got to change that. But that big, beautiful bill also stopped the provider tax, outlawed a provider tax. A provider tax is our hospitals in this state said, "Hey guys, you're not smart enough to expand Medicaid. You tax us and we'll bring in that money." And then that money's sent to the feds. And then the feds send us about $9 for every dollar we send up there. That helps keep our rural hospitals afloat. We also lead the nation in rural hospital closures. There's going to be more, unfortunately, because of the big, beautiful bill. So this year, we've got a golden opportunity to take this seat back and bring representation back to the rural areas as well as the urban areas in this district. I want to be a congressman for everybody. And whoever wins this, if Democrat wins it, you're going to be seeing a lot of us because whoever wins it is going to have to come back into the district week after week after week and continue this campaign until next November. Because if we win it, or when we win it, the Republicans are going to do everything they can to try to take it back. But I need all of your help. We can win this. I'm the candidate from the rural area that can close the gap in these rural counties. That is the key to this. I've fought tough races against Republicans. First time I ran in 2012, I won by 1/10 of 1 percentage point. Obama was on the ticket that year. He lost my district by 21 points. I can win a tough race. Thank you.
Well, now here for Representative Dixie.
Thank you.
Did that on purpose. Can you hear me? I didn't turn down. All right, I'm sorry about it, but I'm pretty sure Bo set this up. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all a quick story, but we feed off your energy, right? And I know that you guys can get loud because I heard when you said indivisible for all. And you said, now there's a story that President Obama told when he was out on the trail about what it was raining and he was tired. He didn't want to go to this event, but he had to go anyway. So I'm going to shorten the story a little bit. But when he got there was a little lady in the background and she said, looked like she didn't want to meet him. She didn't want to see him either, but she was one of the labor people. So she said, "I fired up." And then the crowd said, "Ready to go." He was like fired up, ready to go. And she just kept saying it. And then next thing you know, he felt it. The next thing you know, he was fired up and ready to go. So I want to try this with you, okay? When I say fired up, I want you to say ready to go. All right, y'all with me? And I heard your voices, so I know you can be loud. You ready? Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. Thank you. That's what I mean right there. Now, one last thing. Before I get started, I was today years old. I've known Bo for 10 years. I just found out his name was James. Anyway, I'm State Representative Vincent Dixie. I've been in the State House for 4 terms and 7 years. Also the former House Caucus Chair. And I got into politics because I used to own a daycare for adult daycare, and I specialized with people with Down syndrome and Down syndrome and dementia and Alzheimer's, because I have an affinity for people like that, because I know one day that we all could be in that position. So I was trying to make a good business, right? I had a good business model, but I was struggling to pay people a living wage and provide good health care for them. And it was tough for me to do that because it's just, I was like, so who's in charge of the reimbursement rates? It's like the government. I was like, aha, that's where I need to be. Because if we can't pay people a living wage to take care of the people that need to be taken care of, what kind of country are we living in? And I did not want to be live in that kind of country where I didn't do my part. And so when I was raised by a single mom, and I have 2 brothers and a sister, and I'm the youngest, the smartest, the most handsome. And they would agree with me. I promise they would. But my mom never made over $28,000 a year, and she worked for AT&T, which at one point it was South Central Bell, and then AT&T, and moved on. But she retired in 1999, and she passed away in 2018. But because I had some healthcare experience, and with the little Social Security that she has, and the little pension that she had, there was no way she could make it. So I put myself in a position of where I could be able to supply her shelter, so I could take that away from her, take some of her bills away from her, so I could take that off her. But what about the people who don't have a Vincent, who cannot provide shelter for themselves, cannot provide food for themselves, and have to choose between medication or buying the food or putting a roof over their head? No one should have to do that. What we need to focus on is make sure people got enough food on the table to eat, a roof over their head, enough money to pay their bills, and if they get sick, to be able to go see a doctor. Because everyone here should have enough dignity to have one job, a good paying job, and you be able to pay your bills, have a little money left over for a vacation or savings or both. There's no reason in this country we cannot do that. But people are looking over us, the everyday people. People are just forgetting about us in Washington. The people that were sitting there to represent us are overlooking us. And it's time to say enough. But we can do that with this particular election. And there's a lot of policy discussion that we'll get into tonight and ideas to me what you may have. But I want you to know a little bit about me and my background and where I come from. Because I fought tooth and nail. I'm a small business owner. Matter of fact, on Main Street was my first office, and I own a bail bonding company called A Way Out Bonding. And that was my first experience. It was my first office I opened in 2009. July 9th, 2009 was that day. And then I also used to come up here. I was a referee in high school football on this field right here. And it brought back memories because I used to ride a motorcycle until my wife told me I had to get rid of it. So I would ride to the games. And that was like my good ride through the back roads to come up Clarksville Highway. And this was my way to have a look through my head. So I understand what it takes. I've been around the community. I've been in Springfield since 2009 with my business. And I understand that we
us have to have somebody that fights for us, that understands our problem, that understands that Social Security is not guaranteed anymore. And I want to ask you, did any people know there was a school shooting today? So make sure that we do not become numb to that. Okay? Thank you. I'm Vincent Dixie, and I appreciate your support.
Sure.
So it's a little fitting that I get to go last because I'm not an elected official. My name is Darden Copeland. I'm a first-time candidate. I've never run for office before. I've never been elected anything other than an elder in my church. And you don't run for that. They sort of volunteer. But a little bit about me. My background, I grew up in rural Virginia, Culpeper County, population 30,000 or so when I was there. And my grandfather was the dairy inspector for the state. And I still know every single farm that's now currently a housing subdivision where we came from. My dad started a small business. My mom had me, they found out they were pregnant her junior year of college. They had me a little early. They found out they were pregnant. They had a wedding in July and they had me in January. You do the math. They're still married. He cleared the prom. They grew up next to each other, still married, still live in Culpeper. But I grew up in Culpeper, Virginia, and I went to school and I had student loans. I had to triple down on student loans. My father had a small business that ultimately failed. My mom took a job in a factory working the overnight shift so that she could put food on the table. She could be there at dinner time to feed us, and she could be home in the morning to put breakfast on the table and get us off to school. And when my father's business failed, we needed a safety net. Our family needed a safety net. That's a hard place to be. Growing up, you don't really know what class you're in and you don't know where you stand. My parents said we were rich in love, and that's all I knew. My sister, she got into Chapel Hill, out of state. Pretty tough school to get into. She couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it. She joined the Air Force so that she could go to school. That paid for school. She went back on the GI Bill. She's now a doctor, physician assistant in Washington, D.C. My little brother joined the labor union, United Food Commercial Workers. When he was in high school, he was bagger of the year, cashier of the year, and worked his way up. And he's still in that same industry today because of that job that he had. So when I came out of school, I knew that I wanted to work in politics. But I knew that I wanted to work for the party that built safety nets, the folks that built them, the folks that fight for them every day, the folks that repair them and stand up to folks like what we have in the White House right now. So I got in and I thought my way to make change in the world was get good Democrats elected to office. I'm going to send them up to the state house or to Congress, wherever it may be, and they're going to make decisions. They're going to help people like me, families like me, and folks around me. So I did that. I worked for Don Beyer. That was my first race in 1997. He was a lieutenant governor in the position in Virginia. We got beat pretty bad, but I was hooked on politics. I worked for Gephardt, champion of the middle class, Midwest values, labor union supporter through and through. I wanted to work for Dick. I got to work for Dick. After that, I worked for Al Gore with his campaign. We lost Supreme Court. We lost that vote by one in the Supreme Court. So I was fortunate to go work for Stan Greenberg and James Carville. What you see is what you get with James Carville. He had a saying that if you cannot win, you cannot govern if you cannot win. And what I want you all to think about right now, and to make your decision, is who can win this election in December. One of us is going to win in October, but the question is who can win the seat in December. After 2004, I worked for Lieberman. I worked for Tim Kaine when he was mayor of Richmond. I did his first statewide race. I did a number of other races. But in 2004, I was a little burned out. I worked for Kerry, and we lost to George W. Bush for a second time. And we all woke up the next morning and we said, how much worse can this get? And right now we have our answer.
Yeah.
So I took a break. I want to start a family. I want to settle down. Moving around and state to state, that's hard. So I started into the public affairs space. I took my campaign skill set and I put that to use working for initiatives like building solar power plants, like building affordable housing, like putting grocery stores in food deserts, like senior housing, memory care facilities. When the Salvation Army flooded in downtown Nashville, we helped find them a replacement facility. Everybody's for the Salvation Army. They drop the coins in the red bins at Christmas, but they don't want them in their backyard. So we developed a pathway, a business model that said, let's go help people navigate local politics, not necessarily D versus R, but let's go stand up for folks that need help. And let's be consensus builders. We send our folks to a training program at Harvard, MIT. It's called the Mutual Gains Approach. Larry Susskind wrote a book, several books, and he teaches mutual gains that pretty much everybody's in the middle. Let's figure out how everybody can win. And so I brought that consensus building to my business and trying to let a business do that. My wife was a family nurse practitioner, Belmont University and MTSU. She started her own medical practice. We've started our two businesses. We've had to navigate not just healthcare for the two of us. We have two kids and trying to navigate, what kind of health coverage we need, not just for us, but for all of our employees. And we've had to navigate that. So, we navigated the SBA process and how to get a loan. And I think that it's that common sense business mentality, coalition builder that can make a difference. So again, my name is Darton Copeland. Thank you all for being here. I know there are many other things you can do tonight, but I hope you learn about me.
Most people over the room notice that agriculture is the leading industry in Robertson County, so we're going to start with that. And this question will begin with Representative Dixie and come this way. Many people would say that the farming community is more concerned and even more anxious now than any time since the 1980s because of what it's costing to put into production and then what results might be when it's come time for the harvest. So with that situation there, what would be your approach to address the needs of farmers? And also, how would you address getting a farm bill passed that actually does what it's supposed to do? Representative Dixon, you have the floor.
All right. That's a loaded question. Thank you for that question. One is we have to address the actual cuts that they're facing, right? That farmers are facing right now. And it's not specific to Robertson County or Tennessee. It's a statewide problem that we're facing right now. Well, we have to make sure that our farmers get the resources that they need, but we also have to address the actual resources that they receive. There's a climate issue that affects what goes in the ground and what comes out of it. And we got to make sure that they have enough workers to harvest the plant. And so there's so many issues that we need to have a comprehensive farming bill that encompasses all of those. So it has to have climate control, and we also got to be able to give them the resources they need for the subsidies that they need in order to make good yield work for all.
Yeah, first and foremost, we got to send somebody to Washington to go to fight against these tariffs. The farmer. Right now, China has not bought one single soybean. They're the biggest buyer of our American soybeans on the planet. The number one ingredient for fertilizer comes from Canada, potash. It's got a tariff on it. So it's costing farmers more to put things in the ground, and they're not able to sell it. And then if one of their pieces of equipment breaks down, you've got steel tariffs, so it's costing them more to get a piece of equipment. It's killing our farmers. It took $61 billion last time to bail out our farmers from this idiot's tariffs. Lord knows what it's going to take this time. So first and foremost, we got to have somebody that will go and fight for our farmers and not the corporate farmers. We're looking for the family farmers. But, I want to be that person. Thank you.
No, what Bo said is exactly right. We had a forum the other day in Dixon, and we sort of gave almost the same speech where we talked about the tariffs and what the cost of fertilizer coming out of Canada. That's the other thing. I will say in Trump's big bad bill, there was $60 billion in bailouts and support for the farms because the Trump administration knows how hard they're going to get hit. Unfortunately, the farmers I speak with, they would rather sell their crops than relying on this assistance. So, while they try and dress it up and the largest transfer of wealth in that bill, and yet they're still just trying to throw lip service to us, there's a better way to do it. I think about what's going on with Vesper Village here locally, with 600 acres of development that's going to put something like 3,000 homes on it. We have to give farmers options on how they can keep a farm in their family, because all these farms in Tennessee are all family farms, most of them. And we have to figure out a way to do that. And I have a suggestion with TVA, and maybe if we had more time, I can get into it. But that is a travesty to put 3,000 homes on 600 acres right here. That's 10% of the county's land zone, if I'm not mistaken.
So I believe I'm the only person on this panel that's actually worked on the Farm Bill and perennially tried to make USDA better in terms of mitigating their historic discrimination, removing red tapes for rural communities. USDA saw 70% staff exodus from the Trump administration. The best and brightest were working at USDA to try to ameliorate the situation for family farmers. USDA has also ended support of disadvantaged Black farmers. And without action in September, the largest private land conservation program will start winding down unless they pass a bill to stop the government shutdown. So what's the antidote? And I've been working on this for a while, is a 21st century Farmer Bill of Rights, which would include fair contracts, transparent pricing, and protection against corporate retaliation. I've also in my career worked to fight to break up big ag monopolies and redirect that USDA funding to mid-sized farmers rather than industrial operations like we see in West Tennessee and beyond. So I have a track record holding USDA accountable and ensuring that there is technical assistance for rural and small town communities so that they can access the funding to preserve their family farms. Thank you.
Let's send it back. We'll start with you on the next question. We have a public health crisis, especially in terms of the expansion or lack of thereof of Medicaid here. How would you address these problems, and especially what can be done now to prevent closure of a number of rural hospitals in our state?
Yeah, so I started my career as a Medicaid organizer, and I remember being at the legislature talking to a West Tennessee senator and trying to explain the benefits of Medicaid expansion for workforce development. And he goes, "I'm never going to vote for that because it's a liberal policy." And I thought, you know what? Well, I'm going to learn how to unseat you. So I learned all I could about campaigning. I built up my, street cred campaigning. And when that didn't work, when I found out we are gerrymandered to all hell in the state, I decided to run against them. And so Medicaid expansion is something that has been the undercurrent of my radicalization in this state and is something that I hold deeply to my heart. My first organizing event was outside the Houston County Hospital, raising awareness about cuts to Medicaid in 2017. I feel like it's Groundhog's Day. So in terms of what we can do, it is going to get really bad. And there is an ongoing federal bill right now, the Save Medicaid Act, that would restore the Medicaid funding that the BBV cut. And I would happily sign on as your next congresswoman.
So unfortunately, with the big bad bill coming through, we anticipate somewhere around 300,000 folks are due to lose their Medicaid health coverage. That number would be far worse if we had expanded TennCare. We've not expanded TennCare. I think it was alluded to earlier that we're one of the few states in the country that hasn't expanded. 41 states have expanded their version of TennCare Medicaid, and we can't get that done. And these are not just states with Democratic governors or Democratic legislatures. These are states with Republican governors and Republican supermajorities, and we can't get it done here. I promise to use my platform as a congressman to work with whomever the next governor is and work with my colleagues in the legislature to figure out how we can have a better safety net and expand TennCare. The big bad bill makes these cuts. They don't go into effect until after the midterms in 2026. Trump and the administration know that these cuts are going to have disastrous impacts on them. And so that's why they pushed it out. Medicaid is also not just healthcare money, but it's also money that goes into the school system and others to help as a support.
Yeah, first and foremost, win this seat. The big bad bill passed by one vote, one single vote. We need to send somebody to Washington that we can reverse the effects of that big, bad, beautiful mess of a bill. This district has already lost two rural hospitals. I'd say there's probably at least 3 more that are in jeopardy as soon as this goes into effect. We've got to start fighting back, and we can start back this year by winning this seat. It's going to take a lot of work, but the rural counties are the key to winning this seat. You getting all your family and friends out is key to winning this, and we can take this back, and we can stop this healthcare disaster that's about to come. Too many Tennesseans, 300,000 will lose. Another 300,000 are going to have very high rates because losing their subsidies on the marketplace. So we've got to do something and do it quick.
Thank you. It's one thing that we also have to realize these cuts that this administration is doing is also affecting that average everyday worker. Our regular insurance benefits. We're going to see our premiums go up as well. Just yesterday on Monday. Sorry, we do the same thing every day. So Monday was Blue Cross Blue Shield. They announced they're going to have layoffs. And the reason why they're having layoffs is because of rising healthcare costs. Doesn't make sense to me. But what we can do as people is make sure that we send somebody that understands this. My aunt is on Medicare. Well, she's on Medicaid and Social Security. Now I say every time that they make a little a raise for Medicare, I mean a raise to Social Security, they tax it just enough that there's no gain. And she depends on this for her medicine. She has diabetes, and that she's advanced in age, and the medicine is getting more and more expensive. But I sit on the board of Skyline Hospital in Nashville, and I understand the need that we have for healthcare and trying to address the needs that we all have, whether it's rural or urban.
Let's start with you. I think we all know that ultimately electability is the primary question. We, the people in this audience and the people in Robertson County, are going to choose one of you four. What distinguishes you from your opponents in the primary? Tell us about that.
First, I would like to say it's the bow tie. I think distinguishes me very well. But I think this being said is there's going to have to be someone that can build a coalition because it's not just rural areas that's going to rule this. It's going to be urban areas. It's going to be Black people. It's going to be brown people. It's going to be white people. It's going to be LGBTQ. It's going to take a coalition to build that. I appeal to all those audiences. And most of the people we know that, and I know that rural counties that make up the majority of this district. But in this short run that we have to get to this race that start next week on September the 17th, that we have to get people out to vote. And right now, in order for us to flip this seat, we have to get Black and brown people out to vote because they historically have not come out to vote. And that makes a difference in each race, whether it's the primary or the general. So that is the key. Who can make Black people, who can motivate them to come out and vote in masses when they haven't been voting so far? And I think that's me.
We've got to have someone who's been in a tough race before. You know, my house district, when I first ran, was a 55-45 Republican seat. I won that seat, like I said earlier, by 1/10 of 1 percentage point. But that also made me the target of the Republican Party for the next cycle. And then I beat them back the next cycle, even though Betsy DeVos dropped $250,000 into my race in the last 2 weeks. Didn't even know who Betsy DeVos was in 2014. Then the next cycle, they wanted to try it a third time. We beat the Republicans back and extended our lead again by our victory. So I've had tough races. My House district now is still a very competitive district. You know, some of my colleagues are in 80+ Democratic seats. They win primaries and they're celebrating. You know, they forget about November. I've got to fight every day to win my seat. And I plan on doing that in this congressional seat. I can appeal to the rural areas and I can appeal to the urban areas. I've done it in the state house and I've worked all my life in these rural areas in campaigns. I just want to serve you in Congress and I'm applying for the job for you.
We have a math problem in this district. When Mark Green ran last time a year ago, our candidate got 38%. 2 years before that, our candidate got 38%. It's a math problem. For all the excitement in this room and the four of us, there's another room tonight that has 11 candidates in there and a bigger room and more money. Some of these Republicans are already spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on TV commercials. They have a head start and they outnumber us. We have to hold down the margins in the rural areas and drive up the turnout in the urban areas. I'm the candidate that can do that. I have just enough ego to sit on the stage and tell you that I can do it, but a ton of humility to want to serve. I'm a consensus builder. That's how I lead. I don't lead. I lead with a handshake. I don't lead with a haymaker. I'm not afraid of a fight, but it's not my default setting. I'm not running to raise my profile. I'm running because I think I'm the candidate that's going to win. We're going to agree on 95 or 98% of the issues. Where we disagree is how we win. There's some, I think, that want to go on TV, raise a profile, nationalize this race, raise a lot of money. I think that's dangerous because I think when Trump flies in and they nationalize it and they outspend us, I think we get beat. My approach is to go retail. Let's go grassroots. Let's hold the town halls. I had a town hall here on Friday night last week. It was great. I've got 19 of them scheduled across the district, multiple trips to multiple counties. I've got more coming. Check my website for more. That's how we're going to win. We've got to go out and meet people and we've got to listen. And if we can do that, we can rebuild the brand, we can rebuild the party, and we can win this seat. Thank you.
So what distinguishes me, I'm the only woman on either side running out of 15 men. Thank you. Yes. And I'm the only candidate that hasn't lobbied on behalf of billionaires or massive corporations and or has never taken corporate PAC money and does not intend to for this race. Now, this race is about turnout. And who followed the Iowa State Senate election where Caitlin Dray won by flipped of Trump district by 20 points. 20 points. I had the highest total voter turnout of any Democrat in the 2024 cycle of a state representative. And I've also explained how I've been able to turn out small town and rural voters, especially for these ballot referendums in really tough states like Ohio and Montana. I know what I'm doing. I have never backed down from a fight. And I'm the one that has been doing the dogged work day in and day out of trying to build capacity in our district, in this district, and in the state to take back Tennessee. And so I do feel like I'm the candidate to drive turnout, excite the voters, and get them to the polls. Thanks.
Well, then we'll start with you. One of the more difficult aspects of what you'll be doing is you'll be going into the House of Representatives as almost legally invited. So what will your strategy be for working with the GOP at the House?
Yeah. So my first year at the legislature, I passed a bill which was unheard of in the super minority. And I had to do that by listening, by asking, being curious as to my Republican colleagues, especially those of leadership positions. So I have an insatiable thirst of curiosity, and curiosity killed the cat, but it's led me to great places. And so I'll take that same curiosity to Washington. Additionally, I'm a social worker. And I think, especially in Tennessee, it's really important that we are asking open-ended questions, that we are, recognizing the inherent dignity and worth in people. And even though I disagree with a lot of my colleagues, some of them I can't stand, right? But I have been able to build relationships in the legislature with some of the most staunch Republicans, including one that has a cutout of Trump in his office, because of similar issues. And that includes, ending crony capitalism, corporate subsidies for stadiums. There's a lot we can agree on. And especially as things start to devolve in this state, we have to create entry points for people to come meet them where they are.
So I mentioned I got my start in Virginia politics, and I was fortunate to work for Tim Kaine. I did his first race for lieutenant governor. Mark Warner won the governorship that year, strong Democrat. The thing I like about Virginia politics, in Virginia, when you get elected governor, the day you're sworn in, you're a lame duck. You cannot run for reelection. So you have to govern to the middle. You have to reach out across the aisle. And I watched Warner, the governor, and I watched Tim do it too. They knew how to work with the legislature. They might not have agreed. They might have had knockdown, drag out fights, but they were always civil to each other. I think we're missing that in Tennessee. I think we're missing that in the national politics. I think that we have the most dysfunctional state legislature in the nation. And this idea that taking somebody from this broken system, from this broken system and sending it to that broken system with the idea that we're going to fix anything is a little bit laughable. So I'll give you an example. We had this town hall last week. I called the two folks who represent this district, Sabi Kumar and Senator Kerry Roberts. And I gave them a heads up. I said, I'm coming to your district. And I don't expect you to come, but I just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to be there. You may have seen something. I'm going to be in your district. What's the best sandwich shop in town, et cetera. Found out that Senator Roberts, it was his wedding anniversary. He was going out to dinner and wished me well. And I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call the other side, because at some point we may have to work with them and figure out how do we expand tent care in the state? How do we fight for a local hospital we might have to close? We had a bill in Tennessee, in Nashville, the Tennessee State Fairgrounds was in danger of being torn down. And I worked with the former ag commissioner, who we helped save that place. We helped save the ag commission, the ag buildings, the expo centers, the 4-H, and we helped save that. That person, that former ag commissioner, is now John Rose, congressman. I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call them, because Robertson County has more in connection and with Sumner County than it does in Nashville. So I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and reach across the aisle.
My entire time in the General Assembly, I've been in the super minority. And if you've seen any of me on TV, I give the other side hell. But I've got some of the closest relationships with some of the most extreme Republicans. And a lot of my colleagues in the caucus are like, how do you do that? Well, you've got to know the subject matter you can sit down and discuss something with, somebody with. You also can get to know them as a person, know their family. If you know something about somebody a little bit, it's a little bit harder to hate them. But I needed those people for years and years. We were able to band together and able to stop vouchers in this state year after year after year, until finally Bill Lee just bought and paid for 3 state legislators last time, and we just couldn't stop it anymore. But that's how you do it. You find the subject matter that you can agree on across the aisle, and you sit down and you treat people with respect.
Right. In the General Assembly is probably the best training ground that we've ever had to go to Congress. So right now we're the supermajority. So it's hard to convince 27 Republicans to go with you to pass a meaningful bill. But I did pass a meaningful bill that was education. It's called the Science, Education, and Math Act, Advanced Courseware Act. It's giving more access to the poor and Black and brown kids to get access to those classes to help them get into college. But it's a lot easier to maybe have to convince 4 people. The guy that sat next to me, he was so far right, he bet me back around left. But we became good friends because we would sit there and we would talk about each other. I think the speaker put us together because he thought that we would beat at each other's throats because we were so opposite. But we became the best friends because we would sit there and talk about each bill. And we didn't agree all the time, but I understood why he voted that way. And he understood why I voted that way. Sometimes he changed my mind, sometimes I changed his. But that's those type of relationships that you have to have. And you don't have them with everybody, but there will be 4 or 5 that you will eventually become closer to and that you can talk to. And I think that's a heck of a lot easier doing 4 than 27.
That's probably you. I'm old enough to remember not that many years ago when the national debt reached $5 trillion, and we were preparing for economic catastrophe because of that burden. Today, it's probably $37 trillion. Whatever that is, I can't grasp it. My question to you is, why is no one seeming to pay attention to this? And is it even a crisis?
Yes, it is definitely a crisis. The problem is their scheme of what they're doing is very genius. Is to keep everybody in struggle mode. Because if you're struggling, you're just trying to get through the day. You're just trying to survive the day. This country makes so much money that nobody should ever go to bed hungry, or nobody should ever go to bed without a roof over their head. But instead, we focus on these cultural issues, some of the distractions that we have here, and people take their eyes off of the prize. People are just so focused on their job, making sure they got enough, or sometimes 2 or 3 jobs just to make sure they have enough. We have to pay attention to that because they're doing these cuts that are truly impacting our lives now. So if I don't know what I can do to make you wake up or make us wake up, because this is happening at an alarming rate. And they keep making these cuts. They're driving up, every Republican president so far has driven up the debt, and only Democrats have reduced it. So we have to be careful of who we put in this seat that we can buy. Because once we flip this seat, we're going to be able to flip another seat in Tennessee. This is just the beginning. And this is how we change the direction of politics in Tennessee. And it starts with us.
It's priorities. When Biden was in office, every time he would suggest something, propose something, it costs way too much money. It's going to run up the debt. Well, they didn't seem to care when they ran up the debt $4 trillion with their disaster of a bill. But their priorities were straight. They knew what they were doing. They were going to give the wealthiest people in this country a tax break. And they were going to do it on the backs of people like you. They lowered the tax rates for the wealthiest 20% of wage earners in the country and raised the tax rates on the lowest 20% wage earners in this country. What's wrong with that? I mean, that is insanity to make the hardworking people of this country pay more than their fair share and the rich get by off scot-free.
So I agree with my colleagues. This is about, billionaires and oligarchs that are getting theirs and they're not doing anything for us. It is a distraction to say we're going to have the largest transfer of wealth with the big bad bill, but we'll eliminate, tax on tips. And even then it doesn't actually work. So they kind of throw these little, crumbs at us and it's not working. And under President Clinton, 97 through 2001, we had surplus. Clinton he got the hard part of being president right. He got some of the easy things wrong, but we had a surplus and we need to return to that. And we need to get out of these foreign wars, because if you look at what George W. Bush did to us, that set us off on this disastrous, roller coaster to where we're at 37 trillion and we're about to add another 3 or 4 trillion to it. They talk about privatizing TVA to try and make up some of it. We can't privatize TVA. We have to protect TVA because that keeps our rates low. We can't let them do that. We've given enough to the billionaires. We need to do things like raise the minimum wage and make corporations pay their fair share. Apple and Google and all the social media, we can't let them have a 0% tax rate while all of us struggle to meet ours.
When people cry debt, what they mean are that the fact that these programs are being cut on the backs of our Black and brown and rural communities. Social Security will be financially insolvent by the year 2032, which means my generation won't have access to it. Life is so unaffordable right now, and instead of investing in growth, they're screaming about the national debt, but instead they should be investing in people, investing in our economy, investing in care infrastructure, investing in the next generation of leadership with millennials and Gen Z to make sure they have a future. And I think when we talk about national debt, the conversation about young people needs to be there, because this is going to be on our backs. We're the ones that are going to have to see it through. And so, as your next Congresswoman, I will propose really bold policy solutions that invest in young people so that there are jobs, that we can afford our houses, and that we can afford going to college.
That's the WG Representative Bain. I think we can all say that any number of federal agencies, perhaps all of them, are on life support right now. And the obvious undermining of those by the Senate administration. I think about the Department of Education and how schools are suffering because of that. I think about CDC, honestly, right now, I heard you mention about. Are there things that can't be done legislatively to address that? And if so, how do we do that?
Honestly, I think the strategy right now is litigative. And I've experienced this in Tennessee. Representative Lori Johnson likes to say we pass lawsuits, not laws. But right now, the judiciary is holding strong. And so I've been working with families with kids with disabilities who are interested in filing a class action lawsuit against the Department of Education for these cuts. And I think they have a lot of credibility in this fight. And so I do think that the next few years, the strategy is going to be litigated instead of policy, unless we can flip the House and maintain some type of governing semblance in the federal government. But for the most part, I've been working with families that are interested in filing class action lawsuits against the Department of Education so that there is some change. And the current programs that benefit the least of these, especially students with disabilities, are maintained.
I think any one of us, if we had a magic wand, we would do it. I think, unfortunately, we're sort of in the position we're in. And I think that the old adage, sort of, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. We have to win this seat. If you look at how these bills are passing, when the big bad bill came through the House, it did pass one vote, 215, 214. When the rescission bill that pulled back money from NPR, public broadcasts, and farm aid $9 billion that Congress had appropriated and we had promised to people. When we pulled that back, that bill passed the House over the Senate by 2 votes, 214 to 212. There were 4 Democrats that did not show up for that vote. So I think we just have to hold serve in this next year. And that's what got me into this race. If I do nothing else but hold serve and have some parity, then I have achieved my goal. This country was founded on a system of checks and balances, and we're not there yet. We have to have one more seat. We have Republicans voting with us, Massey and some others. So we have to send a message to the Republican Party that we've come to play and we can hold serve in the House.
Yeah, the former ethics czar under Obama has a little organization, and currently that organization has 150 plus lawsuits against the Trump administration. That's how we have to do it, unfortunately, in the court system. And then you hope the Supreme Court doesn't take up the case or he'll win again. But in the Tennessee General Assembly, that if a Republican presents it, it's normally going to pass. So in committees, I have to think more about a litigation type defense than I do about trying to defeat something. So I have to ask questions that are leading that they will say something in a committee that will put that in jeopardy when the courts look at it. So that's what I've had to do over the last decade or so. I have to just ask questions to get them to more or less step in it. So when they get in court, we can defeat that piece of legislation and they can rule that that's unconstitutional. Thank you.
We have to protect the Department of Education. They've given this responsibility to the states, and the states have proven that they will not do right unless they're forced to do right. It wasn't too long ago when we had to desegregate schools, and they were forced to do that. And we have to make sure that our schools still have the resources. Our teachers are paid enough because they're very underpaid. My wife is an educator. She's actually a librarian. So we get it twice. She's a teacher and a librarian. So we can't even read books nowadays. So, but we have to make sure that we educate our children because our children are our future and the education is the foundation of success. And it's no reason or there's no misunderstanding why Trump says he loves the uneducated. So we have to make sure that we protect the Department of Education because that's the cornerstone of building our communities. Thank you.
Dixon, let me ask you a question about immigration. I think everyone here knows that the vast majority of Americans believe our immigration system is broken. What should Congress do to give us a comprehensive system of immigration?
One is I want to compare it to how voting rights are restored by felons. Those processes to become a naturalized citizen and to get your voting rights are so cumbersome. And it's expensive and it takes years and years and years. There are people that are trying to do the right thing, but they can't because they don't have the money, because you got to hire a lawyer. And then a lot of times they get arrested, and even they're getting arrested when they go to court to try to do the right thing. So what we have to make sure is we stand with them because it can happen to any of us. People are being arrested just because they look Hispanic, they speak Spanish. It's basically a stop and frisk all over. And at the end of the day, it could be me next. It could be you next. So we have to stop now. And if we don't put a stop to this right now, it's a slippery slope. And our freedoms, all of our freedoms are at risk. And so we don't stop this now, who knows where this will end. So we have to stand with our black and brown brothers and sisters to make sure that they are protected and we bound together to protect them. Thank you.
Yeah, last summer, Senator Langford of Oklahoma had a solution. He had a bipartisan solution that would have hopefully solved this issue. But Trump didn't want it passed. He wanted an issue. He wanted to cause problems in our country and use it for an election issue, which they have. Believe me, they've used it over and over. But this is just being a bully. You know, The Cato Institute, which is a far right-wing organization, just came out with a study that 85% of the detainees that they are taking in have never committed a crime. They're just taking hardworking people who are trying to provide for their family and taking them to undisclosed locations, whether it's Alligator Alcatraz or in the middle of Louisiana, or a guy who wants to send some to Uganda. I mean, it's disgusting. You know, I recently I flew back from Europe. We were flying back from Ireland, and some young kids were on the plane with us. And someone on the plane asked those kids from Ireland, said, "What do you want to see first?" And one of the children said, "Want to go to the Statue of Liberty." And I looked at his parents. I said, "Well, it used to mean something in this country. We need to make it mean something again."
So this is sort of calculated cruelty by the Trump administration and some of the folks that he has in charge. Stephen Miller comes to mind. You know, it's bad enough we're arresting 200-300 people a day. Stephen Miller says we need quotas. We need 3,000 people a day to be arrested. And that's what's leading to what you see on TV. You have masked agents that aren't identifying themselves, pulling people out of cars and off of little league fields and sending them away. It has to absolutely stop. Unfortunately, I'm not even sure that the litigation strategy is going to work, because if you look at what the Supreme Court did the other day, this is the same Supreme Court that said you are not allowed to look at race when you consider admissions to college. And that same Supreme Court said you are allowed to look at race if you want to pull somebody over. You can literally get pulled over and thrown in jail for the color of your skin. This is in LA. Now, they didn't sign the order, but it's going to go back down and back up again. And Trump has control of all three forms of government. We have to figure out how to do that. One way, Robertson used to say, in order to tell a big story, you need to tell a small story. I think about the Afghanis that helped us when we were overseas fighting the Taliban. They were our translators. They were our eyes and ears. They were the folks that looked out for our men and women in uniform. And when we pulled out, we promised them asylum in this country. And guess what? We're not giving it to them. We're making it too hard to get in. We're making it easy to get them thrown out and not even back to Afghanistan. That message may resonate with Republicans, because when you start talking about our military and keeping men and women safe, what's going to happen in the next foreign war that we go to? Do you think we're going to get help from the men and women on the ground? Do you think they're going to want to help after we turned our back on 110,000 Afghans? They should be allowed and afforded due process. We are taking that away. It is calculated cruelty, and it has to stop.
So instead of asking what will we do, I think it's important to say what are we doing right now to stop the harm? And I have deep working relationships with the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition and the immigration groups, and have been working side by side with them since January to quell the chaos. And let me tell you, it has been horrific. It has been absolutely horrific. But out of that, I think has come something really beautiful. When I was in Dixon a few months ago, a young woman stood up, and she was Hispanic. Her name's Betty Ann. She said, "I work at the international desk at MTSU, and all of my friends are getting deported right now. Can you help?" And so what I did, I connected her to my social work intern. I instruct social work students every semester, and they've launched a campaign to raise awareness about ICE on college campuses. They're connecting to universities across the state, because universities right now have no protocol in place for when ICE comes on campus and the students are not notified. And so I wanted to tell that story because it's a testament to my current work that I'm doing to support our immigration communities, but also building young people, helping them restore the agency to take back their state from the grips of authoritarianism, because we have to invest in them. They are scared. They are so scared. And we've got to be on the front lines with them, standing shoulder to shoulder, helping them build the skills to take back the state. Thank you.
One of the most controversial things that has occurred in this last 6 months is the funding cut for PBS and NPR. I'd like to ask you, what can be done to restore those funds?
not to echo my colleagues again, but I do think once we flip the House, we will be able to restore some of the funding. I don't know to what extent. Our PBS in Tennessee is really struggling. In fact, they are now running a campaign because of the loss of funds, and that's true for groups like Second Harvest as well. So I do think flipping this race is an important stepping stone in the restoration of that funding. But it's also going to take organizing, and that's where someone like me comes in. For those of you who don't know what organizing is, it is trying to raise awareness, building political education of the avenues. And I think, especially in a state like Tennessee, there's a lot of people that don't know what PBS provides. In fact, it's not just TV shows. They're out in the communities. I went to a laundromat the other day and they were there helping young people. And so raising awareness about the benefits of these programs, I think is going to also be important in the fight.
Yeah, and I talked about this earlier. I mean, when that vote happened, it was a Thursday night. My wife and I sat up to about midnight watching the speeches back and forth on this, and we saw that final vote go through 214, 212. Unacceptable. Tennessee Crossroads and the weather alerts that go out. It used to be the weather alerts and nasty weather happened in Florida, hurricane season once a year. We're getting floods and natural disaster events in our part of the world now, and that's how people find out. WPLN in Nashville, they're going to be okay. They're losing about 5% of their funding, but it's in these rural communities where these folks are getting hit a whole lot harder. And in fact, public broadcast is actually just entirely shutting down. What the Trump administration is doing, they're planning more. They call them rescissions. Essentially, they're calling back the money that they've already put forward. I'm not sure what we can do to bring back the funding that was just cut. I hope that the goodness of everybody's hearts and nonprofits will step up, but that may be gone, unfortunately. But there are going to be more rescissions that are planned and talked about and that are coming, and we have to fill the seat. It's vacant. So we have to fill it with a Democrat, and that's why I'm on it.
Yeah, it's pretty sad when Trump is going after Big Bird, and that's what this amounts to. He's going after Sesame Street. I guess they shouldn't have did that skit on him several years ago, but that's what we're dealing with. I mean, just how they can just be as mean as they possibly can be and hurt as many people as they possibly can. But they need this money. They got to have this money. They got to fund their billionaires' tax cuts. And that's how they're doing it. Off everything that's important to most Americans. I know you've heard it from every one of us, but again, the importance of winning this seat and getting Congress closer to the Democrats taking over the majority is utmost. We have this opportunity this year. It's going to be a low turnout. Democrats are enthused and ticked off. I think those two things together will equal victory. But we're going to need everybody to work. We're going to need everybody to knock doors. We're going to need everybody to drive as many of your friends to the polls as you possibly can. That's the key to this. We've got to start winning seats again to stop this madness.
Then again, I'll go back to my statement I made earlier. Trump loves the uneducated. This question exemplifies what lengths he would go to keep people uneducated. What harm does it have to have a PBS? I grew up on watching that when I was growing up because I couldn't watch anything else. We only had like 3 channels growing up. It was before we had all those channels and my TV turned that. But we have to, it starts with us. We have to send a message that we will not back down, because the only way that we're going to change any laws, none of us can get up here and say and snap our fingers and say we're going to do this or we're going to do that. Even when it comes to funding hospitals or funding PBS, NPR, we cannot do that by ourselves. So it's going to take us banding together, flipping this seat, and starting on another seat, whether it's another part of the country or it's District 5. Here, but what we have to do is start now, and it starts with us.
The long questions has come to an end. I'll close with this one, and then we'll see if there's other questions that we can hand out cards for in the 20 minutes or so that we have left out. But I've been asked to ask you before of you, said if you do not win the primary, do you pledge to fully and enthusiastically support the winner? And I'll start with you, Representative Wayne.
Of course.
Absolutely, without fail. And one thing I suggested to the state party chair was that the morning after, Wednesday morning, we should have a breakfast, because when the news cuts to what happened the night before and they profile who the Republican is, the nominee, and who the Democrat is, they need to have a camera crew at a breakfast with the four of us. Three of us are going to be a little disappointed, but we should all be there. I would be there. I know I assume my colleagues would too. And we should raise our hands in unity and say, Democrats are fired up and ready to go. And we're not even going to wait till noon the next day to get working to beat the Republicans.
Damn right. Absolutely. For all the reasons we've been discussing up here, this is too important not to do so.
The answer is yes, but you have 4 different candidates here with 4 different ways of doing things. But if we can all combine each other together, be one person, we will be unbeatable.
Thank you very much. Tony, do we have folks that can hand out cards in case there are questions? I don't know whether there are none.
I couldn't defer to Tamara on that. I think you in the back over there.
Okay, if you would like to ask a question, and let's take about a 5-minute break and have someone hand you a card, and then bring the cards up to me. Okay. If there are additional ones, and not, we can go ahead and move to the polling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the back. Yeah, also yeah. It's a good time. Yeah, did it else. Sorry, do you have to? And we talked to the that's all.